Hello and welcome to In a Spiritual Sense Kids, a podcast for parents, teachers, and caregivers seeking to support their children's emotional and energetic development. On the show, we'll blend insights from neuroscience, child psychology, and emotional awareness as we explore natural ways to help kids understand their own energy, stay grounded, and enhance creativity and imagination. Don't forget to check out our sister channel, In a Spiritual Sense, where we dive a little deeper into the metaphysical, working to build your intuition, connect with spirit guides, the paranormal, energetic healing, and more. Join me, Stacey Piagno, where we work to bridge the gap between science and spirit. Hello and welcome back to In a Spiritual Sense Kids. I'm your host, Stacey Piagno. Today I have a story to start you off with. I do love to tell stories, and you can imagine as a primary teacher, I have a bag full of them. But several years ago when I was teaching kindergarten, this was back in my early years, I was fairly new to this teaching thing. You know, behavior management was and usually is one of the biggest struggles that we learn in time. And so to paint the scene, it was late morning. We decided to do some centers. So the kids were divided into different groups. Some were on the computer, some were playing games, some were with me at my desk. And mind you, these kids were 5. So getting everything turned on and passed out and making sure nobody picked off the computer keys for a little snack was a win for me. My expectations for success were quite low. But you know, this day was just like any other. Matthew refused to do any work, so he hid in the bathroom the entire time. Tyler and Connor were playing who can stay off task the longest. Janet lost her entire finger up somewhere in her nostril. And it was a beautiful start to the day. It gets more interesting, of course, when I discovered it was getting close to lunch. And as we were about to line up, sweet little Lillian was having so much fun, she realized she had to pee. Well, she had an accident all down her pants and all over the carpet. And as she's frozen with embarrassment, crying her little eyes out, the pee is continuing to drip down her leg. Meanwhile, I'm now running her across the entire room, arms straight out, weaving in and out of games and kids and toys. And so as she's crying, I'm getting her a change of clothes. I'm also trying to get the kids lined up. Layla's over in the corner, literally playing hopscotch, back and forth with the pee puddle on the carpet. I'm not making this up. Simultaneously, I'm now banging on the other bathroom door, trying to get Matthew out because he's been in there for half an hour. Lillian comes out redressed. Layla finally runs out of steam from hopscotch, and she joins the line. She's laughing, Lillian's still crying, and as I yell at Matthew to get out now because we're leaving, he runs out butt naked, and the class is now halfway down the hall. I swear this is true. Apparently, he was doing the do, and he liked to take off all his clothes to feel more comfortable. It's actually a very common situation I run into. Anyways, my class is now out in the hall with no supervision, and I'm just trying to prove that I'm a good teacher and I can get my kids to lunch, I swear. And so I share this because, as very good teachers and parents, there will be times when we struggle. And there might be weeks when we go through struggle, and even years, right? It comes in waves. But it's through these struggles where we can find magic. And so today's episode is one where I hope to share the magic that I have found by transmuting the chaos to joy. I've also got some tips for how to help curb some of those common behavior issues we see at home and in schools. And so today I wanted to take you on a little trip with me of how each of these stories were not only comical, to say the least, but they were some of my greatest challenges, and therefore, some of my greatest teachers. You see, when we face situations that are challenging, they offer us a very explicit view of what is needed and what might be lacking. And they therefore stand as a compass and offer us direction if we are able to see through the disharmony of that challenge and learn to read the energy and redirect the energy. You see, Travis was a little boy in my class. Travis was not his name, nor were the names above. You know, I keep full confidentiality on this show. But for the purposes of this story, I will call him Travis. Travis was a spicy little boy. He liked to do the exact opposite of what was asked, and then look at me to make sure I saw him doing the opposite. Travis would dive in the middle of the hall, only when I asked the class to walk using the hair stare, which means they would stare at the hair in front of them as they walked. You know, it's a cute, fun way to get them to walk in a straight line. Not Travis. If I said stand up, he would sit down. If Kendall dropped her water bottle down the hall, which shocked the entire class with a loud bang, Travis would let go of his right as she picked hers up, seeing who he could get to look at him. If I said open your books, Travis would close his books. My sweet little Travis. Well, you get the point. And you can imagine the year I had with Travis until I learned to change my approach. It's very easy for these kinds of behaviors to turn children into the problem kid. But when we look at Travis's behavior, it very directly shows us what he needs. With Travis, it was attention. See, one of the beautiful things about behavior with kids, and very much with life in general, is that life teaches us through opposites. Reading a kid's behavior makes more sense when you think about it using opposites. Understanding duality and being able to work with it is one of life's most magical principles. And the trick is not only being able to understand this concept with the mind, but to be able to work with it and use it as a tool for understanding, for problem solving. You see, very often when our kids act out, there's a chord within them that's not being met. There's an emotion or feeling that is screaming out and asking for something. And very often, they will perform behaviors that call attention to the wrong thing as a way to try to fill that empty gap within them. And so, as I learned, when I got on to Travis for sliding in the hall and making noise and throwing his pencils up as high as he could in the sky, he did it more. Because when Travis was doing these things, I was giving him attention, which is what he not only wanted, but needed. Have you ever heard the saying, any attention is better than none at all? This is very common for our children, especially when I found out Travis never got to see his mom. His dad worked out of town, and he was screaming inside to feel seen. Now, does this mean I let Travis get his way in order to better fill that gap of attention seeking? Because I know he needs attention and I feel bad for him. Absolutely not. Sometimes, however, that does happen with parents and teachers. The kid needs attention, so I'm just going to give them lots of attention. And it's okay if he's not held to the same expectations as others because he needs to feel loved. When we do this, however, we're not necessarily setting that kid up for success, nor are we solving the problem. You see, there's an art to the way we do it. It has to be on our terms, not theirs. A trick that works for me is to ignore the behavior, not the child. And we do this with positive reinforcement. And this is nothing new. This has been taught very often in the world of education, maybe to parents, and I'll be honest, teachers are exhausted with this term because it doesn't always work. But the issue I have found within myself and my peers is that although I am aware of this concept, positive reinforcement, I sometimes don't follow it properly. And I don't realize I'm not following it properly, which is causing it to not work. And this example might be more useful in the classroom versus a small family household, but honestly, it's for home too. When kids are young and we are trying to curb their behaviors, this might come in handy. The trick to this positive reinforcement is to first ignore the behavior that is unwanted. This is the first step. And when I say ignore, I mean you didn't even see it. Do not cave. This is usually where we mess up. And this is sometimes the hardest part because we obviously did see it, the unwanted behavior. And sometimes we can't help but give a little glance over in that direction, or a little glare. Or we try to stay unbothered, but we still make a comment as we pass by, whether friendly or serious, or we just snap and get onto them. But even within that little glance over in their direction, it's that little ounce of energy and attention that we gave that continues to feed the action. And I want to mention really quick, this process is more for children who are acting out in defiant ways. Obviously, if your child is doing something you do not want them doing, don't ignore it. Tell them and teach them. What I'm going over now is for those attention seekers who like to cause disruptions for their own recognition. So this is the first step. Ignore the unwanted behavior. Now, next, we have to then jump on any action performed by that child that is positive. And if you're a teacher and you're listening to this, we have had this concept shoved down our throats, usually by higher ups who have never worked with kids. And we like to complain that it doesn't always work. We try it a few times, sometimes with 50% energy, and we get annoyed that this concept doesn't work. Positive reinforcement. I hear complaints daily. And I will just share my observations. Some of the most common reasons why positive reinforcement does not work is because, 1, we don't release control at the right times. 2, we don't praise them repetitively. We're going to get into this. 3, we don't make additional time for that child, one-on-one time. 4, we aren't checked in with our frequency. Sometimes it is as simple as we don't believe it's going to work, therefore we're right. It's not going to work. But we're operating with a low vibration. I will also throw in here, I do think both hard and soft reinforcement is needed. And we need to know our kids and what they respond to best, because there are kids who respond to both hard and soft tactics, respectfully. But I do believe in positive reinforcement if it is done correctly. And yes, we can throw in that tough love at times because kids need balance and they need to understand contrast. But there's a right way to do this. Again, from my experience, first we ignore the behavior fully and we jump on positive actions. A few things with this. When we point out these positive actions and give praise to our kids, we need to first share explicitly what we liked. Travis, I love how you're holding your pencil when you read. Thank you for showing others around you how to sit with a listening body. We not only give them attention when they are participating in a positive way, but we explain why it matters within our explanation. Now, the struggle with this, the reason why it usually falls apart is because we will start to do this, but as the attention givers, we don't stick with it consistently or to the amount that the child actually needs. Here's a good rule of thumb. It takes 3 positive thoughts or prompts to balance out just 1 negative thought or prompt. And I share thought because this is true to our internal thoughts that we give ourselves. When we are trying to rewire our brain's neuroplasticity, the network within our brain, and we have 1 negative thought about ourselves, it takes 3 positive thoughts about ourselves to rebalance our energy. This is also true when we speak to kids. And we have to actually mean what we say too. Kids will pick up on that. If we don't mean it, or if we're not really engaging with that kid when we say it, it doesn't really count. And so if we have a student or your own child who is constantly hearing negative comments about how wrong they are doing something, we have to make sure to give them 3 comments that are positive, pointing out something that they are doing correctly to keep them from internalizing that they have failed. And that's the common theme with kids who seek attention. They want attention, yes, but they want to feel wanted and needed. They want to be leaders, but often lack the opportunity because they are acting out in ways that prevent them from receiving these opportunities. So ideally, every time Travis did the wrong thing, I would have to find him doing the right thing 3 times, and all within the same activity-ish or time frame. It's exhausting, and we forget how attentive we have to be. The reason positive reinforcement often doesn't work is because we're not doing it enough. We're not staying on top of it. And we need to mean what we say and look kids in the eyes when we speak to them. I've seen it work time after time if we can do it properly. There's an art that I want to try to convey. And with these steps that I'm going through, praising them repetitively is often one that we lack within this concept, which causes it to fall apart. So, repetition. In addition to releasing control a little. Now, I can talk about this topic because when I started working with children, I was a control freak. I was not tuned in to my energy at all. You see, in the beginning of this story, when I spoke about Travis acting out, it used to make me mad because I had to be in control. And all of these little things that these kids were doing were disrespectful. And they might have been. But I had to learn how to have enough sense to hold space for it and pick and choose my plan of action. I had to be bigger than my emotions if I was going to teach them how to do so. Because what often happens is we feel we are losing control and we start reacting instead of responding. We have to be a little loose with our grip. This actually allows us to be more in control. It's like if you're trying to draw a picture and you're holding your pen so tight, you're not going to be able to draw smooth lines. Or you're swimming in the water and you're trying to float, but you're so tense. You're actually causing yourself to sink. We have to allow a little bit of chaos to occur and be okay with it in order to control it. If not, we're going to be constantly feeding bad behaviors because, again, we're feeding all the unwanted action with attention. And on top of that, our frequency becomes very dense, which creates a harder time for us to adjust and move on, and creates a harder time for kids to connect with us and actually internalize what we're saying. Remember, it's usually us, not them. So my point with the control thing is, if we are able to stay on a lighter frequency while teaching and working with children, we will not only make it a more pleasant experience for ourselves, but the kids will be more receptive as well. Also, a quick trick to pull perspective into this is to find humor within your most challenging moments. Humor is a tool to transmute dense energy into light. On a vibrational level, in the most literal sense, humor alters our auric frequency. Humor gets us to see outside of ourselves, just as we are teaching our little ones to do. When we laugh, we output frequencies that are light in vibration. It's very healing and can instantly get us out of our own way. Kids are fun and they're funny, but we have to be wise enough to see it. This whole positive reinforcement issue, I believe, is an issue because, as I was saying, I don't think we are truly buying into it or following it through. We often have the mindset that it's not going to work. Or, like I mentioned, we'll do it for a little while, but not follow through with it. So we might start off positively, but then at the first sign of trouble, we mentally check out and we lack ownership of the problem. And I think it's because we as adults get tired or we block ourselves by being control freaks. I mentioned in the past, sometimes our expectations need tweaking. And so to get us on a better frequency to follow through with any behavior struggles, we can give ourselves that much needed energy by shifting our perspective to one that creates laughter. Sometimes it's nice to step outside of yourself and view your life as a movie. What would the title be? Who are your main stars? I used to have about an hour drive to work, and when I had a hard day, at first I would be a little grumpy. Yes, we women often need to vent, but through my venting, I realized I became quite the storyteller. And building up these stories on the way home would sometimes turn into my favorite part of the day. I can't wait to be home and share today's episode. You know, these kids, they are magical. And they often teach us more about ourselves than we think. And they need us to see humor in their actions. And they need us to make their days fun, which in return will make our days fun. That's something we forget. We are in control of our energy and our day and our feelings, and we have the power to enjoy every situation by the way we view it. We hold that power. And this is not just when working with kids. This is every day and every struggle we go through. We have the ability to transmute any situation into something pleasant and comical if we can be creative enough to see it. So I really wanted to add laughter in as a tool because I think we sometimes forget that's a choice we can pull out at any time. We gotta release control a little. In return, it's going to give us more control. Play with the duality of this and you'll get it. You'll see it happen right in front of you. You'll feel an instant shift within you. Pull in the laughter, release control, create the movie you want to see and let it play out. And last point with positive reinforcement. The kids who need this, who need that attention, we have to make time slots to give them our presence. As both parents and teachers and babysitters and whoever you are listening, our kids need us to block little windows of time for them to be heard and for them to be seen. Again, even if there's no time, put 2 minutes on the clock and give them your full attention. Give them your eye contact. Get down to their level or pull them up to yours. That 2 minutes will be one of the memories they hold on to when they go to sleep at night. Especially to those kids who ask for it with their behavior. This is another step we forget in the process of positive reinforcement. I'm guilty of it. We try to give positive attention to helpful behavior and we ignore unwanted behavior, but the root of the problem, the reason why they're doing this unwanted behavior in the first place, is because they need that time with us. They need to directly feel heard and wanted. Just one-on-one, just you and them. So we can correct and train them all we want. But if we forgot to support that pivotal reason why they are doing it, all our hard work is going to trickle out and we'll place the blame on the concept not working. All kids need our attention. They all need to feel heard and wanted, but especially those who cause disharmony in your day. Those are the ones who you need to have the strongest relationship with. And as a parent, if you're hearing that your child is struggling in school as far as behavior goes, I can tell you from the teacher's perspective, they need you. They need more special one-on-one time with you. And it doesn't have to be big, grand trips or long hours of your day, but they do need that presence we spoke about. Because again, being present slows down time. It expands and creates memories. And at the end of the day, 15 minutes of presence and eye contact and active listening will feel like hours to a child. And it will create memories for them to fill that empty gap, which often fuels behavior issues. And this was all taught to me by Travis. Now, Bobby, defiance is one thing. Emotions are sometimes another. Usually the root issue connects somewhere in the middle, but oh, my poor sweet Bobby. Have you ever looked down the eyes of a child who is just wailing screams and tears? I'm sure you all have. Well, Bobby would do this on the regular. With a straight face, mind you, and no real emotion attached. See, Bobby was the king of fake crying. He would scream and stare at you as if you're having one of those blink battles. I kid you not. This little boy was staring at me with a blank face and pretending to scream cry. And he would leave the tear stains dripping down his face, and he would make them drip on his paper to make sure I saw how upset he was. He actually did this. And there's two things here with Bobby I want to talk about. One is how he obviously wanted attention in this example I'm currently sharing. But two is that Bobby was overly emotional in general. He struggled to regulate his emotions, and he definitely had some hidden anger deep down in him. And there were reasons for it, but I'll tell you about the breakthrough I had with Bobby and what I learned from him. There was one particular outburst. It started because he didn't get his way. That was usually one of his triggers. He got angry, stormed off, sat in the corner, and stared at me because he wanted me to look at him. And I was fully aware of what had just happened. I actually saw him yell at another student because he didn't like the card he selected in the game. So he threw the game piece he was holding and stormed off. Then, when I did not give him any attention, here it came. Wailing, screaming. Honestly, it wasn't even close to a real cry. He was just making loud noises, begging me with his actions to come consult him. And as I mentioned above, if we don't want the behavior to continue, we gotta ignore it and show some tough love. Honestly, the noise didn't bother me. You see, I can wait all day. And that's what I did. Bobby actually screamed for so long that he put himself to sleep. And he was not a toddler either. He was old enough. Here's the deal. When our kids are in the midst of a tantrum, whether genuinely or just self-induced, the moment of that outbreak is not when we try to fix. And it's not when we try to console. If they're babies, yes, they need to feel mom or dad's body to comfort them. But at this age, this is not the time to give attention. That's number one. And it's definitely not the time to cave just because we want it to end. Kids are too smart for their own good. They will use you to get what they want, most of the time subconsciously. Sometimes it's a bad habit they've fallen into, but they do this. I honestly remember doing it when I was a kid. This is behavior management 101. At least this is what works for me. From my experience, take what works, leave what doesn't. When our kids are in the midst of a fit, just stay calm, stay neutral, and as you are ignoring what's happening, also make sure to observe what's happening. So when they're done, you can help them reconnect with, quote unquote, what you saw. I learned this once in a behavior management course, and I have found success with it. Just repeat to them what you saw after they've calmed down, because when we share what we saw, it takes the emotion out of the conversation and helps them see outside of themselves through the eyes of another, which is a form of reality we need to help them connect with. Remember, kids are learning to see outside of themselves, and when we tell them what we saw within their actions, they are better able to take it in as something helpful and connect with the reason why it happened. It's more digestible when we say, I saw you do XYZ and leave it open-ended versus saying, you did XYZ. You can't do that. There's too much ego in that. Kids aren't receptive to it. But when we just explain what we witnessed and leave some space for thought, the kid is going to connect with what they looked like and they will intrinsically learn a greater lesson as opposed to you telling them what and why they need to change. We want to help them see it within themselves. We learn best when we connect the dots by going through an experience, which is why we need to let the kid cry. Let the kid feel all the emotions in a safe environment. And when you go back and discuss the incident, which you need to do, paint the picture of what you saw. They will form a better understanding for why they were doing that, and this will help them grow their emotional intelligence because they will see the big picture of how they acted and how others around them felt and looked. And with practice and our help, they will start to see their behavior patterns, and they will be better able to pick up on if it's helpful or hurtful. That's a good phrase I like to use. Was that helpful or hurtful? Because they get to diagnose their actions. It helps them admit the truth of their behavior without you telling them. They get tired of hearing us. Sometimes our voices become background. But when we make them tell themselves how they acted, for example, was it helpful or hurtful? They get the picture. So, after Bobby calmed down and awakened from his little nap, I walked over to him real quietly, away from the class, and I very directly told him, I will not talk to you when you act that way. And when you're ready, you can come to my desk and talk to me. And I walked away. I gave him a little bit of control. I gave him some choice. He can come see me whenever, but under my terms. When dealing with unwanted behaviors, I find a lot of success when I speak to my children very directly and very calmly. He later came up to me and I told him what I saw. I simply stated, with no ego, I saw you playing a game, and I saw you pick up a card and throw your game piece and yell at Sarah. Then I saw you make a mean face at John and start screaming. And the look on his face when I told him, again very calmly, it was like he had no idea that he appeared that way. He had no concept of how he looked to those around him. He even cut me off a little bit and yelled about how everyone was staring at me and I didn't like it. This had been when he was screaming. And I again turned it back to him and I said, well, why do you think everyone was staring at you? And he was silent. He knew. I said, you were pretty loud. And he released a breath and agreed. And I didn't have to get on to him at all. And I bring this up because at this point, he was so receptive within this conversation, we actually had a fantastic discussion. Again, this kid was 6 years old, and we talked about his future success. He loved art, and he was so good at it. But if I'm being honest, he had a really bad temper. And we talked about how successful he can and will be as he gets older. But we had a serious conversation about the incident that just happened, because he did it a lot if he didn't get his way. And within this conversation, what I learned about Bobby was that he felt like no one ever listened to him. There it was, the root. I actually was so proud of the way he expressed himself to me when we dug in a little deeper. I let him have his turn to talk, and he vented out his whole 6 years of experience in one breath. He never feels like anyone listens to him. He's so wise. He said, adults never listen to us kids, and we sometimes have a lot to say, and you guys never listen to us and how we feel, and I just don't know how to stop being emotional. How can adults just tell us to stop? I can't just stop feeling. I mean, he literally said all of that to me. And I applauded him profusely for explaining how he felt. And I took the time to listen. Without trying to teach him anything, I just listened. And I will tell you, with his body language, it was probably one of the few times he has ever felt heard. And I realized in that moment, thanks to Bobby, how he was right. We adults, a lot of the time, don't truly listen to what our kids are needing. And there's a time and a place. During the middle of the chaos, not the time. In the middle of running errands, teaching a lesson, in the middle of a transition, probably not the time. But the thing is, we need to make that time to go back and let our children express themselves to us, or at least try. This is how we build trust with our kids. We allow them to feel heard. They will then better respect us and better care about our advice and direction. Building trust with our kids is crucial for behavior management. But again, it does need to be within our terms. Because although, yes, they will teach us lots, we are the ones who need to represent ourselves as guides to them. They need to understand that we are not equals. That's a big change I see with New Age discipline. Again, this is just my opinion, take it or leave it, but sometimes we are allowing our kids to be in charge. We are allowing our kids to friend zone us, and we're losing that edge of being a parent or a teacher or leader. We are allowing our kids to set the perimeters because we're either afraid to hurt their feelings or we're just being inconsistent, which makes it hard for kids to know what we expect. We're allowing them to take over control and run the roost, so to say. And I do think we need to stay cognizant of this. We're in charge, period. So, with kids who struggle with their emotions, it's important for us to, yes, talk about it at a time that is appropriate, and to make sure we don't try to overteach in those moments. Make sure we allow them to express themselves. And let's help redirect their attention and their actions. Role-playing is very helpful too, after a discussion, for them to replay what happened and then choose a different outcome. So after me and Bobby were done talking, we discussed what he can do next time if he feels this way. And we try to replay the incident so Bobby can choose what he will do differently if he feels this way again. And make sure to give space for them to practice this. Just because we talked about what he will do differently doesn't mean he's going to be able to just fix it. This is a process. We have to allow space and time for children to practice. And so with this, when kids do struggle with their emotions, it's helpful for us to give steps and visuals for them to practice whenever they feel emotional. After we start having these talks with them and build that trust, it's important for us to remind them of these conversations as we see behaviors start to intensify. We want to teach them how to catch these unwanted feelings as they start to feel them and try to fall back on action steps. In Bobby's case, we worked on a little chart with phrases and pictures. 3 steps for him to go through if and when he feels angry or upset. And we would practice it every morning. 1, walk away and find a quiet space. 2, breathing or visualizing techniques. And 3, find an adult to talk to when you're ready. It's easily digestible. He can do this on his own. We want to get these kids to a point where they can regulate themselves independently. So we had this picture card and we spent the rest of the year working on this. And he can now use these strategies when he needs. We often need to bring our behavior management approach full circle by giving these kids strategies that they can actively use and pull out during times of distress. The breathing exercise I gave him was the 5-finger breathing we talked about last week. It instantly resets the nervous system so that the child can move on. When we have emotional issues, we need to dive into the nervous system to calm it down, and breathing directly affects this. It's easy, it's quick, we all know how to do it. And there's so many great breathing techniques for kids, and anything they can visualize along with this is going to help amplify the effect because they're redirecting their attention to something visual. And they're breathing, which again is directly altering their nervous system. There's a lot of good animal breaths on Go Noodle. There's bunny breath, whale breath, how to breathe like a snake, stuff like that. You can also play around with visualization bubbles. Last week, we talked about how to help them center and ground their energy with bubble grounding. I use this one a lot if they are also emotional, but you can also change it up a bit so they don't get bored with the same thing. You can help them visualize a green bubble around them, and it's very warm and protects them, makes them feel safe, and every breath that bubble gets brighter and brighter. Green is the color and vibration that corresponds to the heart chakra and to healing. So this is why I like to use green. So you can try this, or you can just try a light bubble that gets brighter and brighter. Anything that incorporates breathing and visual redirection is going to help them calm down. And for the record, try to teach them these strategies when they're not in the middle of an outburst. They won't be able to follow directions if they're having an emotional moment. Try to teach them prior to or after they've calmed down. Then in the future, it can be something they learn to use and pull out when they need. Sometimes if they've been crying for a while, I'll just go sit right in front of them and start doing 5-finger breathing myself. And I'll take big, slow, intentional breaths, and they will start to do it naturally also. And seeing me trace my hand right in front of them also distracts them and will start calming them down. So try these things and let's see the best in our kids. Let's make life fun and challenging situations humorous. Remember, what we focus on magnifies. So let's bring attention to the traits within them we want magnified. Let's help them manifest into all the best versions of themselves. Sometimes those children who are acting out need us to help see the best in them, because sometimes it can be easy for them to fall into harmful patterns or negative thinking. So let's feed the helpful, dismiss the hurtful, and start to see the magic within every situation. These moments, these challenges are direct teachings for us. It is in the challenging moments that we actually learn how to maneuver through the challenge. The ick, if you've heard me say before. We learn by going through it, going through the challenge, through the game. If there's one thing kids have taught me, it's that life should be fun. Maybe I've mentioned that before, but life is a game and it is fun. And when we can see the game, the challenge right in front of us, we can remember how fun it is and how funny this is going to be later. We're going through hell now, but one day this is going to be funny. Remember, there's power in that perspective. And there's so much life to these experiences. These challenging experiences, there's so much life inside of them. And that's one reason we live, right? To have these diverse experiences, ups and downs. The downs make the ups meaningful. The downs create the ups to exist in the first place. Yeah, we can get into the philosophy of that, but these challenging moments, they're fun. And there is so much humor to them if we could only step outside of ourselves and see the movie. Let me know what some things are you struggle with as a parent, as a teacher. If you're on YouTube, comment down below or send me an email to info@inaspiritualsense.com. I hope today's episode helped inspire you. If it did, please use it to inspire those around you. And I'll see you next week on In a Spiritual Sense Kids. For those looking to connect further, please feel free to send emails to info@inaspiritualsense.com or hit me up on Instagram, where you can find weekly inspiration and updates. I look forward to connecting with you.
This show is part of the Mindful Podcast Network.